6 months ago, Marcus Webb buried his wife. He arranged everything himself: the flowers, the casket, the catering for people who came and went, and said, "She's in a better place," like that was supposed to mean something. He stood at the graveside in a suit that still smelled like the dry cleaner and held his 2 kids close and did not cry because someone had to stay upright. He thought that was the hardest day of his life. He was wrong. The hardest part came after. The Tuesday afternoons like this one, standing at the corner of 5th and Clement with a manila envelope full of insurance paperwork Diane used to handle, realizing all over again that she wasn't coming back to handle it. The hardest part was the way grief didn't shrink. It just got quieter, more patient. It learned to wait for him in ordinary moments. The light changed. People moved around him. And then Marcus stopped breathing. Across the street, a woman stepped out of a building. Tall, natural hair pinned back. She paused on the sidewalk, glanced down at her phone, and something about the angle of her jaw, the exact way her shoulders sat, the shade of her skin in the afternoon light hit Marcus like a physical blow. He knew that face. He had spent 11 years beside that face. The woman turned and disappeared into the crowd before he could move, before he could think, before he could talk himself out of what his entire body was already telling him. He crossed the street anyway. If you've ever wondered how far a man will go when grief gives him something to chase, stay with us. And if stories like this one are what you come here for, subscribing takes 2 seconds, and it means we can keep making them. Before Diane died, Marcus Webb had been the kind of man who came home to Noy, dinner arguments about homework, Lily commandeering the TV remote, Theo's music bleeding through his bedroom door at a volume that was technically still acceptable, but clearly designed to test boundaries. Diane at the kitchen counter, already halfway through a glass of wine, glancing at Marcus over her shoulder with that look that said, "Your turn and I love you" at the same time. That was the house Marcus used to live in. The house he lived in now had the same address, same furniture, same slow leak in the upstairs bathroom he kept meaning to fix. But the noise had changed. It was careful now, managed. Everyone moving through the rooms like they were trying not to disturb something that was already broken. Marcus was 43 years old and running on about 5 hours of sleep per night. He got Lily to school by 7:40. He got Theo to school by 8:15, which required 3 separate attempts to get the boy out of bed and a conversation neither of them wanted to have about attendance records. He drove 40 minutes to the logistics firm where he worked as an operations manager, sat through meetings, made decisions, answered emails, and then reversed the entire sequence in the evening, adding dinner and laundry and signing permission slips to the list. He did all of it. He didn't complain about any of it. Diane would have called that stubbornness. His mother called it strength. Marcus didn't call it anything. It was just the only mode he had left. Theo had turned 14 2 months after the funeral. He was tall for his age now, with Diane's eyes and Marcus's jaw, and he had gone somewhere inside himself since she died. Not unreachable, but distant. He still ate dinner with the family, still did his homework mostly. But the version of Theo who used to fill entire car rides with commentary about basketball statistics or whatever documentary he'd just watched had gone quiet in a way that made Marcus's chest ache every time he noticed it. Lily was different. Lily was 9 years old and dealt with grief the way she dealt with everything, by asking questions until she reached the bottom of it. She asked Marcus if heaven had a kitchen because she wanted to know if Diane was still cooking. She asked if they could plant something in the backyard so her mother could see it from wherever she was. She asked once, in the complete sincerity that only young children can access, whether it was possible to miss someone so much that they could feel it. Marcus told her yes. He believed it. What he knew about Diane's past could fit in a short paragraph, and he had always known that. She was intensely private about her childhood, not in a way that ever felt deceptive, more like someone who had decided a long time ago that certain rooms were closed. No photographs from before college. No stories about family holidays. Her parents were dead by the time Marcus met her, and the few relatives she mentioned were distant enough that they didn't appear at the wedding. He had never pushed. That was the deal they had. Unspoken, mutual. There was only one time the wall came down, just slightly. They had been married about 4 years. Diane had come home from a work event, had more wine than usual, and had sat on the edge of the bed in the dark. Marcus had woken up and found her there. She wasn't crying, not exactly, but her eyes were wet and she was holding her own hands in her lap like she needed something to hold. He asked her what was wrong. She said a name, just once, quietly, like it cost her something. Deja. Then she lay down, pulled the blanket over herself, and didn't say another word. By morning, she acted like it hadn't happened. Marcus never brought it up again. He thought about that name now, standing on the sidewalk in front of the Hargrove and Associates building, watching the space where a woman had just been. He didn't find her immediately. The crowd on Clement Street moved in that dense, purposeful way that afternoon crowds do, and for a moment Marcus thought he'd lost her completely. He stood on the sidewalk, scanning faces, feeling slightly insane, telling himself with one half of his brain that this was grief doing what grief did, manufacturing the thing you most wanted to see, while the other half refused to let his feet stop moving. He spotted her half a block down, turning into a coffee shop called Becker's. Marcus followed her inside. It wasn't a large place. A long counter along one wall, a scattering of small tables, afternoon light coming through the front windows in long, flat strips. The woman was already at the counter ordering. She had traded the blazer for a caramel-colored jacket, dressed down from whatever she'd been doing inside Hargrove, but still the same bearing, the same economy of movement. Marcus took a table near the window, close enough to see her clearly, far enough that he wasn't obvious about it. He kept his head down and watched. She collected her coffee and sat 2 tables away, opening her laptop without looking around the room. She had the focused, economical quality of someone accustomed to working in public spaces. No wasted movement, no self-consciousness. She pulled a pen from her jacket pocket and made a note on something beside the laptop without breaking her reading stride. Marcus watched her for 10 minutes and said nothing. And the longer he watched, the more the certainty that had hit him on the street began to complicate itself. The face was Diane's. Same bone structure, same mouth, same way the light caught the bridge of her nose. If Marcus had been shown a photograph with no context, he would have said, "That's my wife," without hesitating. But there were differences, small ones. The kind that only someone who had spent 11 years in close study of a particular face would notice. Diane had a small scar at the outer edge of her left eyebrow, a childhood fall off a bicycle that she mentioned exactly once in passing. This woman's eyebrow was smooth and uninterrupted. Diane had a habit, when she was concentrating, of blinking fast, 3 or 4 times in quick succession, like her eyes were trying to keep up with her mind. This woman's gaze was steady and still, the eyes of someone who had learned to control what showed on the surface. The posture was different too. Diane carried herself like a woman who was comfortable taking up space. This woman sat with a particular kind of contained precision, alert without being tense, present without being open, like someone who had spent a long time making herself smaller on purpose. Marcus thought about the name Diane had said in the dark 4 years into their marriage. He thought about something else, too, something that had not occurred to him until this moment sitting in this coffee shop. Diane had never said her sister was dead. She had said she's gone. Marcus had assumed that meant the same thing. He had never asked. The woman across the room closed her laptop and stood. Marcus looked down at the table in front of him. He hadn't ordered anything. He had been sitting in a coffee shop for 10 minutes staring at a stranger. He looked back up. She was almost at the door. She pulled it open and stepped out onto the sidewalk and let it close behind her. Marcus sat very still for a moment. Then he stood, left a $5 bill on the table out of habit, and went outside. By the time he reached the sidewalk, she had already merged into the foot traffic and disappeared. He didn't follow. He stood on the sidewalk and let her go, and walked back to his car with something new sitting at the center of his chest. Not grief, something that after 6 months felt almost dangerously close to purpose. He filed the insurance paperwork. He drove home. He made pasta because it was the one thing he could make without thinking, and he sat across the table from Theo and Lily and asked the standard questions. School? Homework? Anything interesting? and received the standard answers. Lily ate everything on her plate and asked if they could get a dog. Theo ate half of his and said he had a history test Friday. Marcus said maybe to Lily and I'll quiz you Thursday to Theo. And when the dishes were done and both kids were in their rooms, he sat at the kitchen table with his phone and opened something he hadn't opened in 6 months. The folder of photographs from before Diane got sick. He scrolled slowly until he found it. A close-up from their 9th anniversary dinner. Diane was laughing at something off camera. Her left eyebrow was caught perfectly in the candlelight. The scar was there, small, pale, just at the outer edge, unmistakable once you knew to look. Marcus put the phone face down on the table and sat very still. He had 2 options. The first was the reasonable one. He had seen a woman who resembled his dead wife. Grief was a documented distorter of perception. He was sleep-deprived and emotionally unmoored, and the mind under those conditions reached for familiar faces the way a drowning person reached for anything solid. The reasonable thing was to let it go. The second option was the one his body had already been choosing since the moment he stepped off that curb. He picked the phone back up, searched the name of the building, Hargrove and Associates, a mid-sized consulting firm. Then he opened his contacts and found the number for Raymond, a former colleague who now worked in corporate HR and owed Marcus a favor from 3 years back that had never been called in. He saved Raymond's number to his home screen. Marcus turned off the kitchen light and stood in the dark for a moment before heading upstairs. He stopped in the hallway outside his own bedroom and put his hand flat against the door. He still slept on his side of the bed. Diane's book was still on her nightstand, open to the same page it had been on the night before she died. He went inside. He didn't sleep much, but that wasn't new. Raymond came through in 2 days. The woman Marcus had seen near Hargrove and Associates was listed in their internal directory as Deja Warren, senior financial analyst. Hired 4 years ago. Clean employment record. No prior connection to the firm that Raymond could surface from the outside. That was all Raymond could give him without crossing lines Marcus hadn't asked him to cross. Deja Warren. Not Diane's maiden name. A different last name entirely, which meant either she had married or she had changed it deliberately. Given everything else, Marcus didn't think it was marriage. He spent the next week trying to learn anything more and hitting walls at every turn. No social media presence under that name, no LinkedIn profile, no Facebook, no traces of the casual digital footprint that most people left without thinking about it. The address on file with the county was a P.O. box registered to a mail forwarding service. She had built her life, from the outside, to look like someone who didn't want to be found. At home, he kept the investigation contained to his phone and a single notepad he kept in the desk drawer in his bedroom. He was careful. He thought he was careful. On a Thursday evening, he came upstairs to find Theo standing in the hallway outside his bedroom, holding a folded piece of paper. Marcus recognized it immediately, the notepad page where he'd written the Hargrove address and the name Deja Warren with a circle around it. He'd left it on the desk instead of in the drawer. "What's this?" Theo asked. His voice was neutral in the way teenagers made their voices neutral when they were anything but. Marcus took the page from his son's hand. "Something I'm looking into." "Who's Deja?" "Someone I need to talk to." Theo looked at him with Diane's eyes, that particular quality of attention she'd had, the kind that made you feel like the next thing you said mattered. "Is it about Mom?" "I don't know yet. When I do, I'll tell you." It wasn't a satisfying answer. Theo clearly knew it wasn't a satisfying answer, but he nodded once and went back to his room. The harder moment came 2 nights later at dinner. Lily had been quiet through most of the meal, and Marcus had assumed she was tired. Then she put her fork down with the careful deliberateness of a 9-year-old preparing to say something important. "Dad, in the wedding pictures, there's a lady who looks like Mom but isn't Mom." Marcus went still. "In the background," Lily continued, "she's kind of blurry, but I was looking at the album and I thought it was Mom, and then I looked at her hands and she's not wearing a ring. So it's not Mom, but she looks just like her." That night, after the kids were in bed, Marcus found the wedding album and opened it to the reception section. It took him several minutes. Then he found her, blurry, half-hidden, clearly trying not to be seen, but unmistakable. She had been at their wedding. And Diane had never said a word. He waited for her in the parking structure adjacent to the Hargrove building on a Wednesday morning, parked one level above the reserved spaces, with a clear line of sight to the elevator bank. He had been there 40 minutes when she walked out. She moved directly toward a gray sedan in the third row without looking around. The walk of someone who had long ago memorized every detail of her own routine and saw no reason to deviate from it. Deja. He said it from 10 feet away. Not loud, just clear. She stopped. The pause lasted maybe 2 seconds. Then she turned around, and Marcus saw something happen in her face that he had not fully prepared himself for. Not surprise, not confusion, but recognition. Immediate and complete. She knew who he was before he said another word, which meant she had known about him for a long time. "I'm Marcus," he said anyway. "Diane's husband. I know who you are." Her voice was even, controlled. Her eyes moved once to the parking structure entrance, then back to him. "How did you find me?" "I saw you on the street 3 weeks ago, outside your building." Something shifted in her expression. Not softening, more like a door closing quietly. "You should go home, Marcus." "I need 5 minutes." "I can't give you 5 minutes." "She said your name," Marcus said. "Once, years ago. In the middle of the night. She was crying and she said your name and then she never said it again. I need to understand why." Deja stood very still. Her keys were tight in her hand now. "Get in the car," she said finally. "Not mine, yours." They sat in Marcus's car on the second level of the parking structure with the engine off. Deja sat with her back straight and her hands in her lap, looking through the windshield at the concrete wall in front of them. She confirmed what he already half knew. She was Diane's twin sister. Identical. 2 years younger than Marcus, which made her 41. She had been living under the name Deja Warren for over 20 years. She didn't explain why. Not yet. What she said instead stopped Marcus cold. "Diane found me." Her voice stayed even, but it cost her something to say it. He could hear the seam in it. "About 8 months before she died. She reached out through an intermediary. We exchanged messages for a few weeks." She paused. "And then she died." The parking structure was very quiet. "She never told me," Marcus said. She wasn't going to tell anyone. Not until she understood what she was dealing with. Deja turned to look at him directly for the first time since getting in the car. "She was investigating something, Marcus. Something connected to the company she worked for. She found me because that company and the place I work now have the same root. Same people at the top, different name on the door." "What kind of investigation?" "The kind you don't talk about until you have something solid." She looked back at the windshield. "She was being careful. She was being smart." Her jaw tightened. "It didn't matter." The words landed exactly the way she meant them to. "You're saying her death wasn't an accident," Marcus said. Deja didn't answer that directly. What she said was, "I've been living quietly for 22 years because someone made very clear to me what happened to people who didn't stay quiet. Diane found me, and now Diane is dead. I need you to understand what I'm telling you." She opened the car door, then held it a moment before closing it. She looked at him one last time, and in that look Marcus saw something he recognized. Not from his own grief, from Lily's face, the morning after the funeral, when his daughter had understood for the first time that her mother wasn't coming back. Guilt. The specific guilt of someone who believed they had survived at another person's expense. The door closed. Deja walked back to her own car without looking back. Marcus sat in the empty parking structure and did not move for a long time. He started pulling threads. He went back through everything he could access about Diane's last year, her emails, her calendar, the documents she'd left on the shared home computer that he hadn't touched since she died. Most of it was ordinary. Grocery lists, school reminders, a half-finished note about repainting the hallway. But in a subfolder nested inside a folder labeled Tax Documents 2022, he found a name. Hargrove Capital Group. Not the consulting firm where Deja worked, a parent entity. A holding company registered in Delaware with a list of subsidiaries that took him 2 hours to map out on paper. One of those subsidiaries was the financial services firm where Diane had worked for the last 4 years of her life. Same route, different name on the door. Exactly what Deja had said. He also found, buried in a separate file on the home computer, a name and a South Side address. Carl Briggs, with a note in Diane's handwriting. Investigator, cash only. He drove to Hadley Street on a Saturday morning. The office above the dry cleaner was locked. A piece of paper taped to the inside of the glass said, "Closed. Back soon," in handwriting that suggested it had been there for a while. Marcus stood on the sidewalk and understood that Carl Briggs was not coming back soon. That same evening, Deja called him from a number he didn't recognize. "Someone went through my apartment," she said without greeting. "Nothing taken, but things were moved. Things I would notice." A pause. "I haven't felt this in a long time, not since the beginning." Another pause, longer. "You've been asking questions." "I found a name," Marcus said. "Hargrove Capital Group. It's connected to where Diane worked." "Come to me, not my apartment. I'll send you an address." They met at a diner on the east side of the city, in a corner booth, on a Sunday morning when the place was full enough that two people talking quietly wouldn't register. She told him the rest. Not all at once, piece by piece, like someone who had carried a weight for so long they could only put it down in increments. She and Diane had grown up in a household where their father worked as a senior accountant for a private investment group, the same group that would eventually restructure itself into what was now Hargrove Capital. When Deja was 16, she found documents in her father's home office that detailed a system of shell accounts being used to move money connected to human trafficking operations. She didn't fully understand what she was looking at, but she understood enough to know it was wrong, and she said so, to her father first, then to someone outside the family. She never got the chance to say it to anyone who could act on it. Within 2 weeks, 2 men came to the house when her parents were out. They explained to Deja, with great patience and very little emotion, that she had a choice. She could disappear, new name, new city, no contact with her family, or Diane would not live to finish high school. Deja was 16 years old. She disappeared. Marcus listened to all of it without speaking. When she finished, he looked down at the table between them. "She thought you were dead," he said. "All those years." "I know." Deja's voice was very quiet. "I thought that was safer. For her." She turned the coffee cup slowly in her hands. "I was wrong." He found it on a Monday night, 3 weeks after the diner. He had been going through Diane's things slowly. Not cleaning, just allowing himself to open drawers he'd been avoiding since the funeral. The small wooden box she kept on her dresser that he'd always assumed held only jewelry. It held jewelry, and beneath a folded cloth at the bottom, a phone he didn't recognize. A prepaid phone, the kind you bought with cash. The password was Lily's birthday. Inside, a message thread with a contact saved only as CB, Carl Briggs. Marcus sat on the edge of the bed and read the thread from the beginning. The earliest messages were from 10 months before Diane died. Short, careful. Briggs confirming their arrangement. Diane sending questions in plain language. Names of executives, dates of board restructurings, the movement of funds between subsidiaries. Briggs responding with fragments telling her he needed more time. The thread went on for months. Marcus read every message. His hands were steady. He was not sure how. The last message from Briggs was sent 48 hours before Diane's car went through the barrier on Route 9 at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night. "I have enough. We need to meet. Don't use this number again after you read this. I'll contact you through the other channel to set a location." There was no response from Diane. There was no other message from Briggs. Marcus set the phone down beside Diane's book, still there, still on the same page, and he sat in the quiet of the room they had shared for 11 years and let the full weight of it settle. She had known. Not suspected, known. She had found Deja, understood what Deja's disappearance meant, connected it to the company she worked for, and hired someone to build a case. She had done all of it in silence, in parallel with their ordinary life, dinners and school pickups and Sunday mornings, carrying something this large without letting it touch the surface. He opened the nightstand drawer on her side. At the very back, behind a lip balm and a phone charger and a book of stamps, was a folded piece of paper. Diane's handwriting. One line in the center of the page, written in the deliberate way she wrote things she wanted to be sure of. If something happens to me, find Deja. Marcus read it twice. Then he folded it along its original creases and held it in both hands. She had known she might not make it to the meeting. The folder on her phone, the password he could guess, the note in the drawer, none of it was careless. All of it was for him. His wife had faced something dangerous entirely alone. She had not survived it, and she had left him a door. He should have been more careful about the prepaid phone. He'd left it on the kitchen counter the next morning, just for a moment while he went upstairs to get his jacket. And when he came back down, Theo was standing there holding it. Not looking at the messages, just holding it, turning it over in his hands the way he handled things he was trying to understand. He set it down when he heard Marcus on the stairs. "That's not your phone," Theo said. "No." "Whose is it?" Marcus picked the phone up and put it in his jacket pocket. He could feel Theo watching him. "It was your mother's," Marcus said. The kitchen went very quiet. Lily was already at school, it was just the two of them, and the morning light coming through the window above the sink. Theo pulled out a chair and sat down at the kitchen table. He didn't say anything, he just waited. And that patience, in a 14-year-old, was the most Diane thing Marcus had ever seen him do. Marcus sat down across from him. He didn't tell him everything. Theo was 14, and some of it wasn't his to carry yet. But he told him the shape of it, that his mother had been looking into something before she died, something connected to where she worked, something she'd kept private because she was trying to protect the family, that the accident on Route 9 might not have been an accident. Theo listened without interrupting. When Marcus finished, the boy looked down at the table for a long moment. Then he looked up. "Is Deja real? The name on that paper. Is she a real person?" "Yes." "Is she safe?" The question landed harder than Marcus expected, not because it was complicated, but because it was exactly the right question, and his son had gone straight to it while Marcus had been circling it for weeks. "I don't know," Marcus said honestly. Theo nodded slowly. "What are you going to do?" Before Marcus could answer, his phone buzzed on the table between them. A text from a number he'd saved as DW. "Someone came to my office yesterday, asked my colleague if I had family in the city, said they were an old friend trying to reconnect." A second message followed immediately. "They're not an old friend. We're out of time." Marcus read it twice. Theo was watching his face. "I have to go," Marcus said. "I know." Theo stood up. He was almost the same height as his father now. Marcus hadn't fully registered that until this moment. "Dad." He said it in a way that made Marcus stop moving. "Mom didn't tell you because she was protecting us. Don't do the same thing she did. Don't do this alone." Marcus looked at his son for a moment, really looked at him. "Lock the door after I leave," Marcus said. "Call Mrs. Patterson. Stay with her until I'm back." Theo was already reaching for his phone. Deja was already moving when Marcus reached her. She met him in the lobby of a downtown hotel, neutral ground, public enough to be safe, anonymous enough that no one would look twice at two people sitting in the lounge with a laptop and a manila folder between them. She had a bag with her, the kind you packed when you weren't sure you were going home. "How much time do we have?" Marcus asked. "I don't know, days maybe. Less if they figure out I've been contacted." She opened the laptop and turned it toward him. "But I've been preparing for this for a long time. I just never let myself believe I'd actually use it." What she had built over 22 years of quiet, careful living was not nothing. She had documents, photographs of originals she had taken at 16 before she disappeared, smuggled out in a way that struck Marcus as remarkable for a teenager operating under that kind of fear. Account numbers, names, a ledger page showing fund transfers that drew a direct line from Hargrove Capital's founding entities to a network of shell companies used to move money across 3 state lines. "It's old," she said, "from 22 years ago. On its own, it might not be enough. But not on its own, Marcus said. He put the prepaid phone on the table between them. Carl Briggs built a case for Diane. Current evidence, recent transactions. He said he had enough. Whatever he compiled, he sent it somewhere before they got to him. Diane set up a secondary channel. She was careful. He paused. She was as careful as you were. They spent the next 4 hours in that hotel lounge working backward through everything Diane had left behind. Marcus had brought printouts from the home computer, every file that seemed out of place. Deja went through them with the focused efficiency of a financial analyst, which she was, and which Marcus realized Diane had known when she reached out to her sister rather than going to authorities first. She found it in a cloud storage account linked to an email address Marcus had never seen before. Created 9 months ago, accessed only from public networks, never from their home devices. The password was the date of the first song Marcus and Diane had danced to at their wedding reception, formatted as a file string. Diane had chosen a password only Marcus could guess, not because she was being careless, because the folder was always meant for him. Inside was a folder labeled for M, 12 documents, photographs of transaction records, internal communications, a memo from a senior Hargrove executive that referenced the 2001 restructuring, the year Deja disappeared, in language that, alongside Deja's original documents, made the full picture visible for the first time, and a voice recording. 4 minutes and 11 seconds. Carl Briggs's voice, calm and methodical, narrating what he had found and when, with dates and source descriptions, the way an investigator dictated case notes. Diane had received it. She had stored it here. She had labeled the folder for M. She had known she might not make it to the meeting. Marcus listened to the recording once with his eyes closed. Deja sat across from him and did not look away. When it finished, Marcus opened his eyes. She built me a case, he said. It wasn't quite a question. She built us a case, Deja said quietly. They contacted a federal investigator through a civil rights attorney named Sandra Okafor, who listened to everything without interrupting, asked 3 precise questions, and told them she knew who to call. She called back in 36 hours. The process that followed was slow and institutional and deeply unglamorous. There were interviews, there were forms, there were weeks of waiting. Marcus took more time off work than he could afford. Deja moved into a short-term rental on the other side of the city. But the case moved. The account numbers were verified. The voice recording was authenticated. Deja's 22-year-old documents, cross-referenced against Briggs's recent findings, gave federal investigators a through line connecting past to present in ways that could not be explained away. 3 executives connected to Hargrove Capital were placed under investigation before the year was out. It was not a perfect ending. Carl Briggs was never found. The specific person responsible for what happened on Route 9 would take longer, maybe much longer, to reach. But Diane's file had been opened. Her name was in a federal record now, not as a victim of a traffic accident, but as a woman who had known something, built a case, and left it for someone to find. Marcus thought that would have mattered to her. He was certain of it. 3 months later, on a Saturday evening in October, Deja came to dinner. It was Lily's idea, which surprised no one who knew Lily. She had found out about Deja the way she found out about most things Marcus tried to manage carefully, by paying attention until the picture assembled itself. She had not been upset. She had asked a series of methodical questions over 2 days, received honest answers, and then announced that Deja should come for dinner because she wanted to ask her things and it was easier to ask things at the table. Deja arrived at 6 with a bottle of sparkling cider and the particular bearing of someone who had spent a long time not belonging to places and was still learning how to stand in a room without cataloging the exits. Marcus took her coat. Theo shook her hand with a gravity that was almost funny, and then immediately went back to setting the table, which was the most socially comfortable thing he could think of to do. Lily stared at her for a full 10 seconds before saying with great sincerity, "You look exactly like the pictures of Mom, but your eyes are different. Hers were softer. Yours look like you're thinking about something." Deja looked at the 9-year-old for a moment. "I'm usually thinking about something," she said. Lily nodded, satisfied, and went to get the bread. They ate. Marcus had made the pasta, the one thing he could make without thinking. And it was good enough that nobody mentioned it, which in this household meant it had cleared the bar. Theo asked Deja questions about her work in the careful, indirect way he approached most things. And Deja answered with more openness than Marcus had seen from her before. Lily ate everything on her plate and asked for seconds. Toward the end of the meal, in a lull in the conversation, Lily looked up.
"Did Mom like yellow?"
she asked. Because Mom liked yellow. She said it was the only color that looked the same on a cloudy day as on a sunny day. The table went quiet. Deja set her fork down. She looked at Lily with an expression Marcus had not seen on her face before. Not grief, exactly, and not quite joy. Something that lived in the space between them. "She picked yellow for her bedroom when she was 7 years old," Deja said. "And she kept it yellow every place she ever lived after that." Lily absorbed this with a slow nod, storing it somewhere carefully. Marcus looked at his daughter, then at his son, then at the woman across the table who had his wife's face and her own eyes and 22 years of silence finally behind her. The house had a different kind of quiet now. Not the careful, managed quiet of the last 6 months. Something less fragile. Something that had been arrived at rather than just endured. Diane had not lived to sit at this table, but she had made sure in the end that the people at it would know who she was. Marcus reached over and refilled Deja's glass.
"There's something this story keeps coming back to that's worth sitting with.
Diane didn't survive. She did everything right. She was careful, she was smart, she built something solid, and it still wasn't enough to save her. That's not a comfortable truth. But what she left behind did save Deja. It gave her children a piece of their mother they didn't know existed. And it gave a man who'd been running on empty the one thing grief rarely offers. A reason to keep going that wasn't just survival. Sometimes the bravest thing a person does is the thing nobody finds out about until it's too late to thank them. If that hit you somewhere real, share this with someone who'd feel it too. And if you want more stories like this one, subscribe. We put them out every week, and every one of them is built around the same question. What does an ordinary person do when life asks something extraordinary of them? We'll see you in the next one.